Let's get started. Thank you all for joining us here tonight for another Q&A with Agri. Tonight, we are talking about the DJI Agras T40 versus the XAG P100 Pro. My name is Taylor Moreland. I'm the owner of Agri Drones. With me, we have Ryan Watson, one of our product knowledge specialists, and Nathan Sayre, one of our drone technicians. So before we dive into this, I just want to say that these are two of the best drones that we have ever tested. And honestly, truly speaking, right now, at least in North America, these are the two best spray drones available in our opinion. Both very good hardware, very good software, and a growing number of users across the country. So this is exactly why that we wanted to test these two drones side by side. A lot of you guys have a very strong interest in maybe thinking about which drone to get, or if you're going to be expanding your fleet, if you should switch or whatever. So we just wanted to make sure that we understood these drones, because honestly, we were thinking, well, maybe we should try to provide both options. But of course, support is our number one thing. So we wanted to figure out which drone we should try to get behind for a support standpoint. So anyways, we are going to get started here. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll answer all the questions at the end. And Ryan and Nathan might answer some of those while we're talking. Okay, so here's an overview. We're going to talk a little about the history of both these drones and drone companies and our history with them. We'll look at the specs briefly. We'll talk about the efficiency, some of our testing on efficiency. We'll look at user experience, and Nathan's going to talk here since he was a new user to both these drones. And then we'll kind of look at support behind both of these drones as well. Okay, so on the history side of both these drones, so both DJI and XAG started their spray drone, or launched their first spray drone in 2015. So DJI is the largest manufacturer of drones in the world, while XAG is actually the largest ag-only drone manufacturer. They focus solely on ag, while DJI has an ag division. So I guess our history with these drones here, the P20 was actually our second drone that I ever operated, second spray drone that I ever operated. I started with, it was a generic drone before that. It was a hunk of junk, really. But the P20 was the first drone that I was really excited about. The XAG P20 was the first drone that I was excited about. At that point in time, whenever we got our P20 back in 2019, it was the, technologically speaking, hardware-wise, for sure, it was the best spray drone on the market. XAG was the first ones to have the rotary atomizers. They're the first ones to have the batteries that clipped in and out, the tanks that clipped in and out. So it was a really good user experience, except for the connectivity side of it. So for that reason, we started testing the T16 with DJI back in 2020, which was kind of DJI's first, really what I consider the first true ag drone that DJI had, was the T16, very similar to the P1 or the P20 with the tank and the battery swap situation. And so you see the T40, it was actually released in 2023. So last year, the 2023 season was its first full season. There were hundreds of those drones across the US. The P100 Pro was released late last year. So 2024 will be its first full season. Typo here. So 2024 is the T40 is returning as DJI's flagship model. Okay, so here's just a brief spec list that we kind of put together based on specs available, based on user information, and based on our experience too. So you see that P100 Pro is a bigger drone. It's 13.2 gallons, so it's 10 liters bigger, 2.5 gallon bigger essentially than the T40, and it does fly faster as well, 45 feet per second versus 32. Now the route spacing, this is of course subjective, and we'll get into this later as far as route spacing. When I talk about route spacing, I'm talking about swath width, right? So the route spacing or swath width is subjective on really all drones, and it is, it's determined by a lot of different factors: speed, height, droplet size, and of course wind as well. But this is, from from both testing and from user experience with the route spacing as both these drones. The cameras are a bit different. DJI has a 12 megapixel camera on a gimbal. XAG has two cameras, one forward and one downward facing. They are stationary. The signal range, so both these drones, we never lost signal when we had line of sight when we were using both these drones. But with the DJI relay, this does extend that. So whenever we get beyond line of sight exemptions or waivers from the FAA, there's the DJI relay that is capable of going beyond line of sight with the T40, T20P. And the XAG camera did seem a bit more glitchy. I don't know if that was just because it was on a phone or what, but when you switch back and forth from the cameras, it did seem to glitch out a bit. Not that big of a deal, frankly. Remote type. So of course the T40 has one remote with a screen built in, while the P100 Pro has a remote and an Android phone that's attached to it. So yeah, software units right now, the P100 Pro is just in metric. I'm sure that'll be changed very soon. The P100 Pro has two batteries, while the DJI T40 has one battery. So the P100 Pro has two 20,000 milliamp hour batteries, meaning 40,000 total milliamps and 30,000 total on the DJI, which gives a flight time advantage to the XAG, is what we've kind of seen. Of course, it does depend how you're operating it. Nozzle type, very similar. Honestly, it's basically the same. You have two different disc types with the DJI system, and just the one with the XAG, but not that big a deal. Different pump types. I don't know if that's that big of a deal, but when it comes to the flow rate, P100 Pro does have a higher flow rate than the XAG. So if you're doing high volume work, then the P100 Pro can discharge the tank a bit faster. And then of course for flight speed, that does, that's why they have that there too. And then the obstacle detection. So DJI has quote unquote spherical obstacle detection. So side, forward, downward, and rearward and upward as well. The XAG has one radar mounted on the front that does kind of your downward, forward, and upward on it. So nothing on the sides or the rear. But if you're only flying forward, and that's not that big of a deal, frankly. The warranty is both a year on these drones. However, you do need to make sure, doesn't matter what drone you get or who you get it from, check with your supplier to make sure that they can facilitate this warranty. Okay, on the efficiency side. So I kind of want to break this down quite a bit because efficiency, again, is very subjective, okay? And it depends a lot on what kind of field you're operating on. And so I wanted to break this down into three different categories. What does the manufacturer claim? What do the companies that are selling these drones here in the US claim? And then what did our test show us? Okay, I'm not saying that this is what you're going to see out in the field, but this is what we tested. Okay, and so you can kind of read through the list here, but essentially, DJI claims 52.6 acres per hour. But again, you got to look at the specs. That's 1.6 gallons per acre, 36-foot swath, and 23 feet per second. Now we claim at ASD, and so a lot of people that are supplying the T40, they're marketing 40 acres an hour. That's at a 2-gallon rate, 30 to 34-foot swath recommended on that to achieve that, and that's like your half-mile long field scenario. So our test, and I'll get into how we do this test here in a bit, but test ran for 21 minutes, 22 seconds. I'll tell you why here in a bit. And in that time frame, we covered 19.7 acres with the T40, 2 gallons per acre, 32-foot swath. Yes, 36 feet per second. I'll explain that here in a second. And then what that breaks out to be on a per hour basis, 55.5 acres an hour. The XAG side, so XAG manufacturer, we got a hold of XAG testing, I guess, and they have 69.2 acres per hour, and that is based on a 1.28 gallon per acre rate, 32.8-foot swath, and 45 feet per second. And just looking around on the internet, we do see kind of on the marketing that XAG is claimed at 70 acres per hour at a 2 gallon per acre rate. We don't know what swath width that is. We assume fastest speed that you can go. So we don't know what the parameters are there. We assume that the width would have to be pretty wide. The route spacing would have to be pretty wide. for that to hold true, because what our test showed us is that we covered 19.02 acres in the same time frame as the DJI. So pretty much apples to apples on the efficiency side on both these drones. What we did on the XAG is we did what users, the users that we contacted, what they recommended to do. That was 2 gallons per acre, of course, benchmarked with DJI, 27-foot swath width and 45 feet per second, both on the same field. Okay, now let's get into swath a bit. We have done a little swath testing. We're hoping to have more information for you guys right now, but because of the weather and because of everything going on right now, we don't have a ton of information to show you. So we just have to show you what we have available at the time. So first, I'm going to explain how swath works on spray drones, how you calculate your swath width and your CVs, and then we'll look at kind of some of the results. So this is some of the testing we did with DJI with the T40 back this past spring. And this was done with a string test, which is kind of the standard in aerial application, has been for a long time, frankly. So that's what was available at the time. That's what we did. And you can see here that 3 passes were done on the strings, for the string with dye, run the string through a spectrometer. It senses the dye concentration on the string, basically to show you, how much concentration droplets basically you're getting across that line. And of course, you see center line of the drone right there in the middle, and it tapers off to both sides. You have a hump in the middle, kind of a bell curve there. This is the aggregate of that. This is the average of all 3 lines. And then you have this dotted line right here, this box. And what this box is showing is 32 feet. You see that marked right there. So 32 feet is shown in that box, 32 feet is shown right here. And this, you just have to pick a random number whenever you're doing this test to represent it here. But essentially, you see outside the box, we have kind of some more, coverage outside this box. And so that is represented down here in the pink and the yellow. So as you fly this next pass, you're reliant on your overlaps, your overspray, to make up for what is trailing off right here. And so that's what this dotted line is showing as kind of the average when you take into account your overlaps and what you get inside that 32 feet. And then with that 32 feet represented right here, we have an 8% CV value going back and forth. And with this particular test here, this was done by a third party, by Agri Consulting. Coincidentally, they do aerial application swath width testing, and they say that anything below 15% is acceptable in aerial application. And so that's why, we say you can go up to 34 feet with 13% CV value there, down to 30 feet is kind of what we recommend, that range on the XAG or the DJI T40. And this, again, there was hundreds of these out in the field this past season, and that's what our users did. And by and large, they had good success with it. Okay, so this is the test that we did with the XAG. And so why don't we have this same test with the DJI? Well, we ran the XAG first, and we ran the T40P second, and we ran out of paper. By the time paper got to us, we have to do this is done on receipt paper, is how this is done. You spray receipt paper. By the time we got more receipt paper, weather turned cold, and we could not get any more testing done. So we just have the XAG P100 Pro on the swaths as a swath gobbler test here. And so what this test shows us is largely the same thing. There's your bell curve right there. Looks very similar to the DJI. Of course, we just have the one replication here. And this was done at 45 feet per second and 2 gallons per acre, 10 feet high, just like the DJI, only flying faster, max speed, of course. And this 27-foot route spacing, you just have to put a number in there so that to tell your pumps how much to discharge, right? Because if you had 32-foot route spacing, they'd be discharging more volume over the per second or per minute. So we just put 27-foot route spacing in there to mimic what we had been told, basically. Not that that actually changes what the results would have been by and large. So this test is a bit different because it calculates coverage of the paper. So what percentage of the paper was covered, as you go from left to right across your swath. So here's the center line of the XAG P100 Pro right here. You see the majority of the application is underneath the drone, just like the DJI. What we did find is it tapers off quite a bit faster than the T40. And so, how do you interpret this? We don't have a CV value on this report here. So we can't say, well, you've got 10% CV at 20 feet. We can't say that. We just have to kind of visually analyze this. Swath Gobbler is going to come out with updated software to actually give us this data soon, but we just have to kind of visually analyze this. And so, you kind of have to figure out where you're going to cut it off to make sure your overlaps make up for this tailing off right here. So it'd probably be somewhere around here and somewhere around here. And so this test showed us that if we wanted the most, even swath as possible, I don't know if 27 feet would do it, but again, this is just one test. We definitely want to do more testing here to see if that's accurate. But it does seem like the T40 has a wider swath than the P100 Pro. This is visual as well. You can see this in the field under the right lighting. And the reason for this, we assume anyways, is when you look at a T40, the props are pitched at different angles. So the back props are pitched kind of backwards, the front props are pitched kind of to the side. Now, why would DJI do this? Whenever to get max thrust, they should be at 180. That's how you get max thrust out of your props. Well, DJI did this because, of course, they did fluid dynamic testing to figure out how they could create a better vortex at lower speeds to create a wider swath, and that's what they did. Okay, so user experience is kind of this next section here. And there's very few people that have operated the P100 Pro and the T40 actually in the field, and that got kind of trained at the same time, both those drones. So actually Nathan was one of those people. He came on with us here this past summer as a new employee. And so I'm just going to kind of let him talk about his training with both of these drones and his experience with both of these drones in the field.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. So I guess first I want to start off with some background. Coming in to work for him, I wasn't flying drones. I know a lot of people fly race drones or were in the ag drone before. I wasn't. So this was completely new to me. I did graduate from University of Missouri with ag systems major. So I had the ag background behind me, but not the drone work. So starting off with the first drone I flew was the T40, obviously. The training I got with that is my older brother. He was our custom app manager, and he asked if I could come and help. So his quick training for me was he took me out to a field where he already planned the field out. He gave me the remote, said, click the field, set your parameters, and slide to go. And we emptied 2 tanks of water. And he said, all right, you got it. So I did that. And the next day, Ryan was with us, but we went out and sprayed the field. So our few hundred acres of fields. So that was my knowledge coming in on the T40. So my first experience with that on that day, obviously I had no idea what I was doing still after just 2 flights. On the way down to those fields, I mapped the fields in the truck without any help and went out to the field, uploaded them so Ryan could fly them, and we flew. And what I noticed right away really was just how easy it was for a beginner. Because while he really gave me no instructions, it can be as simple as you map the field with just your crosshairs and put your points in, and then set your parameters. Or once you have a template, put the template and you can hit go. and let it fly. Very simple. You know, the DJI T40, it has the one remote. And whenever you click your field, the one thing I like about it is those parameters that you want slides onto the screen. It's all right there for you to set, easy, and you hit go. So that whole day, Ryan could probably back me up. I probably did ask a few questions, but I don't feel like I was really grilling him for someone who didn't know what they were doing. So then
Yeah.
we get into the XAG where, again, not really any training. When I started it, the hardest thing for me when I started was I couldn't figure out how to get everything connected. So once I talked to someone, it was fairly easy. But what you have to do is that the drone connects to your phone, and then the phone connects to the remote. So what you have to do is you have to turn on the P100 Pro, turn on the remote. You then have to, on your phone, which has to be an Android phone, you have to connect to the remote's Wi-Fi. So that's what I struggled with. Then you get to the mapping, and really it's pretty similar to the T40. Again, you just put your points in, build your fields. Actually, the XAG mapping, there is one thing I really like about it. I don't know if I'm supposed to start going into my pros and cons of each one, but the XAG I really like is they have a multi-field mapping mode where you can actually set your points, but it won't go ahead and draw the lines, which I think obviously for doing multi-fields would be pretty handy. Or if you set your points and then realize it would be easier to start moving things around without having the lines in the way, that can be handy, which again, I liked. Using the app was a little bit more difficult, I would say, because you have your three, actually got the app here on me. Let me pull it up. So you got your three things on the bottom that tell you what you go into. You have your operation tab, which sends you to your drones. So if you have more than one drone, you go there, which is where you connect to whichever drone you're using. Then you have like your field, which you can go into there, and that's where you can collect, or that's where you can go and pick if you're trying to build a field out or if you're trying to spray one. And then you have like your me page, which is just like your profile. So not much to see on that one. But the thing I didn't like about it as much is when you say you have your field made, which, like I said, is pretty similar. Whenever you go to start your operation, you have to do a little bit of navigation to pick your parameters. You know, the T40, it slides out and there's the little drop down that you can pick. With the XAG, you have to click on certain tabs and change your spray setting, to change your route spacing. I think it has a route tab and a spray tab. So again, once I got more used to it, it's easier. But as someone who didn't know what they were doing, it was more difficult to navigate. And then when we got into flying with that, the first couple of times I had no issues. It flew well. It did what it was supposed to do. Then I got into a spell where it started, in those videos Taylor showed in those testings, obviously we didn't do it once. We did those testings, I think 3 times. So there was a week span where we went out and flew 4 times. And 3 of the 4 times, twice the XAG force landed itself out in the field. And another time it stopped in the field, didn't give a warning, stopped, and then continued spraying, or continued down its route, but did not continue to spray. It showed it was spraying, but wasn't. So what eventually I came to find out talking to people was the XAG remote is not meant to take control. So say you're flying, you have your T40 and you want to stop for whatever reason, you hit the stick, it stops it. If you hit the sticks on the remote, it messes up the sequence in the drone and it messes up the electronics and it'll glitch it out. Does it happen every time? No. But that's what I came to the conclusion of why it was happening. So what you're supposed to do is when that happens, is you're supposed to bring it back, set it down, shut it off, wait a few minutes. They say about 5 minutes because it has that internal battery, which they say lasts about 5 minutes. So wait 5 minutes, switch batteries, take it back off, and it should be fine. So the way I was taught to spray was not to let it do all autonomous. When the drone, say your drone's out in the field spraying, and when it gets closest back to you, say there's a gallon or 2 gallons left, or say there's 25% battery left. Yes, you could send it on down its route where it gets halfway down its route and then you bring it home, but then you're looking at dead time. You're looking at time where the drone's not spraying. So what I was taught was when that drone's closest to you, you take back control, bring it back, fill it up, switch batteries. It's more efficient to do it that way than to let it get halfway down and have the dead time. So I was doing the same with the XAG, where to me, it made sense and efficiency wise to land it. And I was hitting the sticks and having those issues. So that was the training and usage that I saw, was just a little more glitchy out of the XAG than the T40. Looking here at the list, the mapping, like I said, it's pretty similar how it goes. They both have like the obstacle you can add, which is very helpful. The no spray zones, which the T40 added in the summer, that was huge. Like I said, I really like the that multi-field mode in the XAG. The settings, honestly, my biggest gripe, which to some of you probably isn't, it really bugs me, XAG's in metric. I like how the DJI does use Imperial. Like I said, probably not a big deal. It's a pretty easy conversion, but I use feet inches all day, every day. So just that switch bugs me. To some of you, it won't, but that's my big irritation with that. And another issue I had was the camera. So this goes back to when I especially first started and I wasn't used to the drones. I actually used the manual mode and the camera a lot. So when I first started mapping, say I'd go out to a field that I'd never seen before because there was someone else's field, I'd obviously give a good barrier between the tree line and the edge of the field. And what I would do with the T40 starting out was I would watch the camera and watch the drone. So as it was flying, I would see, okay, am I too close to this? Am I going to have to redo this? Or more importantly, am I missing acreage of the field that I should be spraying? So especially starting out, when I'd leave these bigger gaps, I'd see I was missing stuff. Well, what would I do? We would have a little extra chemical mixed up. So say we're spraying fungicide. Obviously, you can lay down a little more fungicide. It's not harmful to the crops, of course, depending on which chemical, but we'd mix up a little more. So say we had 50 acres, 2 gallons an acre. You make 100 gallons. We would make 105, 106, have 6 extra gallons. As I was flying, I'd be able to see, like, I missed a little bit of this part of the field, or I could have got closer to the edge. So I could see that with the camera, and then either I would use manual plus mode, which I like on the T40, and spray that edge, or I would just strictly fly it manually and empty what's left into these areas I missed. And with the XAG, you can't do that. The camera quality is very grainy and lags in and out a lot. And from talking to other users, they have had this same issue. And it goes back to, of course, a lot of people say it's all supposed to be autonomous. But I have found a lot of use for the manual mode, manual plus mode, and with the camera. So that was another irritation and limitation I saw on that. Battery life. Another part that the XAG is probably a little bit better at, or is better at. The battery life on the XAG I don't think we strictly did any just like hover testing. I don't think we ever did that, but it's proven in the field XAG is better. Now that T50 batteries have been released, we've been selling them for quite some time. So I don't know if people have quite tested the XAG batteries with the T50 batteries and are testing with the T50 batteries and the 40 batteries. The 50 batteries are about 8 to 10% better. So it is a little bit better, but as of right now, most people would have those older batteries, and the XAG batteries would be better. What else was there, Taylor, that you were wanting me to hit on? And
Hit terrain following a little bit.
yes, terrain following. That is another part where we noticed the XAG was better. It did follow terrain much better, even at the higher speeds. For a lot of you T40 users, you probably noticed times where the T40 would buck and stop in the field, which obviously is extremely aggravating. It happened to me out there. It's happened to almost anyone I talk to. The terraces and fields would cause that, and it's just aggravating. With the XAG, even like I said, with that the 32 foot per second XAG's 45, it followed terrain much better. Really, it did. That was something I really appreciate about the XAG, the P100 Pro, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned battery life, but I just wanted to go back to the screen here just to see what that was exactly, because on this testing here, we did, I mean, we ran a tank load. Well, with the XAG, we ran a tank load, full tank load, because we just let it run like we were taught. And then with the DJI, we just ran a down back pass and brought it back, which was probably close to like a 9.5 gallon. And it looks like the DJI came back with about 56% in our test with the tank run through. And XAG, it's hard to see here probably for you guys in this. I just saw it. Where's it at? 40%. Yeah, 40% or a little over 40% maybe. But it did, the XAG ran a down, back, down, empty, and then did a deadhead pass. Well, somewhere in there it ran empty, so it did have more flight time, the XAG did, than DJI. So I don't know how that, honestly, how that compares. Yeah. And yeah, you're right. I saw that terrain following too. The XAG out of the box is definitely better on the terrain following. You know, one thing that's one thing we've talked to the DJI about quite a bit. And the great thing, well, I guess, okay, we'll jump into support is where this goes to. So DJI, you know, does have quite a bit more market share in the US, and they're growing, you know, their numbers growing a lot. And so they're investing in the US market finally. You know, back when we first started, you know, we would give them an issue and they would say, okay, and then they wouldn't fix the issue. But now they do have 2 solutions engineers that work in the US market, and they are working on releasing a new firmware to change the terrain following, because what the T40 does right now, and the reason that its terrain following was so poor, is it just used that bottom radar, which is mounted behind the battery. And it was a different type of radar than DJI had ever used. And it did 2 things. Sometimes it would see through the canopy and sense the ground. And then also it didn't have much of a detection range in front of it because it was mounted behind the battery. They didn't actually use that front radar for basically predictive terrain following or seeing in front of the drone for terrain following. And so DJI said that they were going to change some firmware to use that front radar a lot, like, because that's what the XAG does. It uses this front radar, which is the only radar it has. It uses that front radar to basically see in front of it to see, you know, the terrain following. So DJI is going to do the same thing on the T40. So we do believe that terrain following will definitely improve with just some firmware updates on the T40. Yeah. And, jumping, that kind of leads me into the support side, because, both these drones are really good drones. I mean, there are frustrations with every drone you're going to get. And once you learn how to operate it, you're going to be a good operator, right? But inevitably, there's going to be some things, there are going to be quirks with drones that are going to, ground you. And so then you have to rely on somebody who has the knowledge to fix that. And so that's where with the T40, what I'm really excited about, actually, first I was kind of hesitant, like, oh, we gotta sell the same drone next year that was out this year. What I realized is that's a huge opportunity, because when you look at how fast this technology has advanced, from the T16 to the T20 to the T30 to the T40, that was every year a new drone. And we went to the T30, we had a limited time to test that, and we thought it was a good drone, largely was, but there were some big issues with the T30 that we had to find out in the field. And had we had our choice, we probably would have sent more T20s out than T30s, based on certain situations guys had. So with the T40 being the drone in the US that has covered the most acres, that has the most units across the US, that has had the most service across the US, and we've actually seen the fewest number of issues on a large scale with the T40, and now it's going into its second year. We've got a ginormous knowledge bank, and there's a huge community with the T40, which is really cool to see. Finally, we're getting to the point where we've got a drone that's reliable and that's going to be put into its second year of service, which is really cool. On the warranty side, Nathan, you deal with warranties a lot on DJI. Experience with the warranty on the DJI side, and just maybe user comments on the XAG. I don't know if you have any of those.
Yeah. So obviously with the warranty, I have not done a warranty with XAG. So all of it is users. So a lot of this information I got was from people who have flown XAG and DJI. Actually, they've done both, worked with both. And from hearing to them, the warranty process is the same, as in each drone has their list of parts that has a time period or an hour period or an acre period, 12 months, 6 months time period, this many acres, this many hours. Both of them have that. And both services also have that 1 year crash warranty, where they say if it's the drone's fault, they will cover. Now, from talking to people who have done both, from what I've heard, is they've had more luck with DJI warranties covering crashes than with XAG warranties covering crashes. Of course, I did not ask them how many times they crashed each. If you crashed once with DJI, once with XAG, and DJI covered it, XAG didn't, you'd probably be a little bit biased in who would in that answer. But they were having more luck with the warranty, which also that comes to say if they are using our support, we have streamlined that warranty process a little easier. I know when we went back and looked, Agri itself did, Taylor would have to check me on this, a little over 60% of all warranties in the US for the T40 were done by Agri itself. So if they did through us, it seems like we have improved the warranty process on our end. But from what I've heard from people on between the two, they've had more luck with the DJI covering. And I believe it's the same process too, where you crash, you're out in the field, you crash, upload logs, send it into them.
Yeah, makes sense. Sounds good. And then integrations, and so what we've seen is, obviously just like John Deere has more integrations, with their software and tractors and everything, because they have the market share. We do see more integrations on the DJI side from third-party vendors, from third-party software companies coming now. That's just because of market share kind of thing. And I know there's a lot of precision, mapping, spot spraying software that has, they choose DJI first to do the integration, just like they might choose Apple over Android to do the integration, just because there's more of them out there. That's definitely what we've seen. Okay, we're going to go ahead and answer questions. If you guys think of questions while we're answering questions, then please put them in the Q&A or the chat. And yeah, quick comment here before we get into the questions. I just want to say that you're not. I mean, both these drones, from what we've seen, are very, very high quality, very good drones. We've tested other drones that I would not say the same thing, and other drones have very limited use cases. I do see both these drones being very good drones for fungicide work on corn. Obviously, they have their strengths and weaknesses. Okay, Ryan, do I start with the chat or the Q&A?
The Q&A's got a couple basic style questions, and then it dives in a couple DJI versus XAG stuff. And then they are starting to come in on the chat right now, so I'll probably just start with the Q&A side.
Q&A side, you got it. Okay, start at the top on the Q&A side. Levi says, must you have an LLC to get your 137, or will a DBA business work? Get an LLC. It's easy. Get an LLC. Levi says, how much does your chemical mixer and tanks and pump cost if you sell them? So the mixer system, a lot of questions on this. We're gonna have to do a webinar on that, I assume. Yeah, mixer system, we expect that to be commercially available this spring, late spring. Don't know how much quantity will be available. Price yet it'll be a little over 6,000. That'll be just for like the box itself. You supply your own tanks basically. Austin says, when spraying trees in a pasture, does it follow the terrain as well, say for like a small hill? So I think Austin, Nathan kind of answered that. And yeah, so the native terrain following is better on the XAG currently. We do know there's firmware updates coming for the DJI system, the T40 system, that will be retroactive to all T40 systems out there right now. So we do see that improving. And of course, there's the Terra program for pre-mapping your height, which with the pasture actually works pretty well on the DJI side, where you can use a mapping drone, map the area, get a point cloud, and then it puts in all the trees in there. So you actually it knows where the trees that you fly up and over the trees with the Terra program too, which is pretty cool. Just another step. How good are the blades, DJI versus XAG? Guys, is there questions and comments? I know there's go ahead.
I would say I really haven't heard really any difference. I've never heard anyone come to me and say that the XAG blades have broke randomly. We haven't had it happen. The T40, obviously, since I'm a tech, I've done a lot with that. There's only been a few times that I've heard of a braid like breaking midair and flying off. And from that, who knows if it hit something? I don't know, but I've never heard of I would say one's better than the other from testimonials I've heard.
Yeah, they're different blades. The XAG is a bit more stiff, and they're mounted on kind of like a rocking mechanism, and they're wider. They spin a lot faster. The XAG do. The DJI spins slower. They're a bit narrower, and they have a bit more give to them. It seems like.
That makes me think one thing we really didn't talk about, I didn't talk about much, was the hardware between the two. If we can have a second on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that was one thing that I did like about XAG 2 was it seems very sturdy compared to the T40. Like it seems like a very sturdy aircraft. The one thing I wasn't as much a fan about is I haven't looked into a lot, but one thing that struck me was the brain of the P100 Pro. So the T40, which we could really get into detail this, which we don't have the time, but it is run by 3 modules: your spray module, your electronics, and your RF module. The P100 Pro's module, its brain, is that they call it, is just one thing. And the big part with that is that brain, from what I've been told, I haven't looked myself, is it costs $6,000. Our 3 modules that fly the T40, they think they're all in the hundreds. Upper hundreds, I should say. I'd have to look to be sure. But I know one of the other technicians is working on a drone right now that had 3 frame rails replaced, all new landing gear, new tank, a lot of most motors, ESCs replaced almost. It's a whole new drone. And the price on that is almost what the brain of the XAG cost. So the price points of other parts on the P100 Pro, I'm not for sure, but that's something that struck me as a technician, how much that one module itself cost. And a lot of times when it comes to cost of repairs, luckily most people at the T40, it's been hopefully under warranty. But the thing that makes the price points expensive is when it hits a power line. Well, we tell everyone, don't hit a power line because that fries everything. And that's where a lot of times these high prices come from. So with the P100 Pro, if you hit a power line and it fries the brain, but then goes into the motors in the SCs like it does on the T40, that is something I'd be curious to see how much that price would spike for repairing something like that.
Thanks, Nathan. All right, John says, are you concerned about the push to make DJI legal in the US? There's a vote coming up on a measure to make government farm payments unavailable for DJI drones. Yeah, so I mean, John, of course, a lot of this makes headlines because it's largely political, especially with an election year coming. We do see kind of a lot of the headline grabbings with, China, and what we see is it's not just DJI. DJI gets the headlines because they have a huge market share. I mean, even outside of ag, think of everybody that has like a drone, like for fun or for real estate work or whatever. It's probably a DJI drone. They have like 70+% of the market share just in all drones. And so when the government's talking about DJI drones, they're talking about the camera drones, they're talking about all Chinese drones. Specifically when we look at like government contracts, federal government contracts, it's just Chinese drones. It's not specifically just DJI drones, it's Chinese drones. And DJI drones are allowed to be used in federal contract because they have a like a safe mode to operate in where they don't transmit data, like all the enterprise drones. They won't transmit data if you put them in that mode. So are we concerned about that? No, we're not concerned about that. It might limit maybe what contracts you can get, but frankly, if somebody needs something sprayed, especially like USDA type work or whatever type work, I mean, they're probably going to hire whoever is available. So I'm not terribly concerned about that. All right, Levi says, is there a T50 drone? T50 is coming. Yes, Levi, will not be that much different than the T40. Don't have time to go into that right now, unfortunately.
There will be more on that in the future.
Yeah. Luis says about the price difference of both. Can you talk about that? Price difference isn't that big, frankly. XAG is a bit higher priced than DJI. But when you're looking at a drone, I mean, you should look past the price, frankly. You should look at return on investment. So if it costs more, does it do more, right? If it costs less, does it do less? So yeah, DJI is a bit cheaper, but it's not drastic, I don't think. Grant says Android only, XAG. Yes, it is just an Android app, correct? On the XAG side.
Yeah, it has to be Android phone, correct?
I tried it on an iPhone one time back whenever we first started dipping into the Rover, and I didn't have a whole lot of luck with it. That's why we went with an XAG, and it's worked much better on the with an Android, and it's worked much better on the Android than the iPhone.
I guess, yeah, that is, I haven't tried it on an iPhone in a while. That'd be something I could try. Maybe they've come out with an update, but the last I knew it was Android only.
Yeah,
Or
and
worked
Grant,
much better.
if you're getting an XAG, Grant, just don't use your phone. Just get a different device. That way your phone's not up there. You're getting a call in the middle of it.
Dedicate it to a controller, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
because that's important to say is it doesn't have to have like a data plan and stuff, your phone, so you don't have to like spend a bunch of money just for that. I don't know what just a base phone costs, but it's much cheaper.
Yeah.
I think that phone in particular was like $200 or $300, I think, that we used, and it was just an Android, a cheaper Samsung.
Yeah. All right. Jim says, which high did you test it both? And does the high was a reflectant factor for the test or not? I'm assuming, okay, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking here, Jim. Possibly how high, 10-foot boat on both of them is what it was on our SWA test. Jim said, do you have a test spreadsheet for the T40 like the P100 Pro showed? Jim, again, when I was talking about that, we did not get that because we ran out of paper and then it got cold. We just did this test here very recently. We will get this test for the same on the SWA card with the T40, and we'll put that out there. Okay. Drew says, what do you see / predict with the used drone market for both DJI and XAG? Do they hold their value well? That depends. You know, that's the thing is it's not like a John Deere tractor where you can say, well, 5 years from now, I'll have, I don't know, 500 hours on it or whatever. And I know that tractor 500 hours are worth this much because there's a huge amount of data. There's not that much data on the used market. So we don't know how much drones are worth used. We really don't. And again, the technology evolves, you know, more and more and more all the time. And so I would just expect 50% of your value back out of it, basically, when you drive it off the lot. Okay. Gabe says, can you explain more on the higher speed on the T40 update coming? No, I can't. Sorry. And we don't know. It's just a test. Like we don't. Is it going to have it? We don't know, because the thing is, like, first off, is faster speed better? Right. That's the question you have to ask yourself. Is faster speed better? Well, you might be able to get more done, but what about efficacy? You know, part of the reason to have a drone is higher efficacy. That means better penetration of the crop than an airplane might have, getting closer to things an airplane might do. And so if you're flying faster, does that mean that you're getting that penetration? Actually, no, it means you're losing penetration. The faster you fly with a drone, the less penetration that you have. You get, you know, kind of trailing vortex behind you instead of it pushing down. Frankly, fly slower and you get much better penetration. We've got guys up around the Great Lakes who are doing, you know, 2 passes on corn for tar spot, because it's, you know, if you don't do that, then you can lose a lot of yield. And they slow down. They slow down, they increase their volume, they narrow their swath width, they get really good penetration, and they charge more, and farmers love it. So we'll explain more if we have anything to update you. We don't have anything to update there. Which one has more robust and durable centrifugal system? Can't speak to the P100 Pro. There's not that many hours or acres on any P100 Pro units that, you know, are enough of them, I don't think, to really know 100%. There's obviously a lot of hours on a lot of different T40 units, and we have seen the motors fail on T40 centrifugal nozzles, but it's not actually the motor, it's actually the ESC inside of that motor, but it's all one unit, so you just replace the entire unit basically. So we have seen those fail. I don't know what % of the T40s they failed on. I don't know if we have that data. You guys?
I don't think we have the data.
Yeah,
Nothing that I've heard
Yeah,
on my
no.
side, at least.
Yeah.
If I come up with a number, it's not going to be accurate. So
yeah. I mean, in the large, the majority of the T40 units that were out there did not have centrifugal nozzles fail, or motors fail, I should say. But it, of course, is going to happen. It's pretty easy to swap them out on both of these drones.
Yeah.
All right. I will say, I guess on the T40, the original T40s, the nut that held on the spray lance that held the centrifugal system, that was easily popped off, but that got replaced with the aluminum nut, so we don't have that problem anymore. So if you have a plastic nut on your centrifugal system with the T40, we do have aluminum nuts available to replace those, so they won't pop off anymore. All right, Louis says, with the DJI, without another drone to map the area, we use the controller and walk to define the area. How XAG works? Oh, yeah, you can use a phone's GPS to map, to mark your boundary with the XAG. You can also use like a RTK unit as well. Thomas says, have you had training through XAG? Thomas, we have not had training through XAG. Well, not in person, I guess. It was, kind of over the phone, and a little bit. I sort of had some in person, but very little, a lot over the phone. All right, Matt says, are the batteries on the XAG able to withstand the use of long fungicide days and not break the tabs off? All three of my batteries are chipped on the connections on the left side. On your DJI batteries. Yeah, so might check your power distribution board on your T40. We have seen where like one of the bolts might get loose, and that power distribution board kind of wiggles a bit, and that actually kind of loosens, and can damage the ports on the battery with the DJI. No idea on the T40 battery connections if they're any stronger. We haven't had that much use through them. But Matt, reach out to us after the fact. Send us some info. We'll see if we can get you helped out. Just send us an email, support@agrispraydrones.com. All right, Zane says, can you load prescription maps to the XAG like you can with the T40 and M3M for variable rate and for forestry mapping? Okay, Zane, I know we have not done prescription spraying with the XAG. I know you can do it, but we haven't done it, so I can't tell you how. I can't tell you how simple a process it is. I know you can do it. I do know with the DJI system, it's getting simpler and simpler, especially with third-party software, making that process simpler. Jim says, I have heard that the XAG batteries overheat very quickly and do not allow flight. Did this happen to you? We didn't have any overheating with the XAG batteries. You charge them in, you can charge them in water. That's their cooling mechanism. You have basically a water tank, and they slide down into water, and so you charge them in water to dissipate the heat while they charge rapidly. The DJIs, it's a heat sink on top. You blow air through it. It's got a charging hub with the fans on it. Rarely did we ever use those fans, but you use them when it gets hot on the DJI system. Yanni says, has DJI indicated that they will improve the centrifugal nozzle output volume and tank size to match what the XAG P100 Pro throws, specifically for higher volume applications like 3 to 5 gallon per acre range? Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because this is, when you're doing high volume work, 5 gallons per acre, emptying your tank faster would be nice, right? So no, DJI has not said that they will do this. We are requesting this. We do know that you can get a little higher a little higher flow rate through the pumps than what is capping you off at. Not what you can't get, with the same pumps, you can't get what you can with the XAG. Basically, what XAG did on their pumps is they just put they doubled up this, it's like a double pump is what it is on one motor. And so could DJI do this? Probably so. It'd be an upgrade. Are they gonna do it? No idea. So we are requesting, don't worry. Okay.
Looks like that's it for the Q&A section. There's a whole lot in the chat. Some of it is copied over from Q&A, so just kind of read through that as you go.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay, so Catherine says, were you getting 55 acres an hour with a T40 at 2 gallons per acre? Yes, Catherine, we were getting 55 acres an hour with the T40 at 2 gallons per acre. Now, what I'll say here is that realistic? Are you going to be able to get that in the field, in every field? No. That's why whenever we tell people we do our marketing with our drones, we purposefully make sure that what we claim is what you can actually get. So we claim 40 acres an hour. You can easily get 40 acres an hour with the T40 on a half-mile long square field. But it is possible to get more than that, absolutely. In what sense the XAG batteries are better? I don't know that there is a sense that they're more milliamps, so you can fly longer potentially, depending on payload, of course, because you can lift a higher payload with the XAG, which would drain your batteries faster, but depending on your payload, you could fly longer. Gabe says, are you guys going to do a T20P versus T40 acres an hour? Yeah, I would love to. Essentially, you're looking at, but it all depends on what you're doing. We did a T20P video maybe a couple weeks, 4 weeks ago, maybe Q&A session. We had a T20P operator, and they were getting a little over 30 acres an hour on big fields with T20P at a 2 gallon rate.
Which is crazy for a 20p when you look at that compared to a 40, but that's pretty neat.
It is, and then you'll have to replace your battery every third tank, which is awesome. Yeah, that's sort of like on the XAG. We were still replacing the batteries every tank load. It's not like we had a situation where in our test with our big field spraying a whole tank that we were able to get 2 flights out of a battery set. So we were still replacing the batteries on an XAG every tank load. Okay, that's the same question there. That's the same question there. Okay, Alvaro says, can you clarify the results of the difference of the swath width? Does the T40 give a wider swath? Generally speaking, from our experience, the T40 gives a wider swath, and that is not just from our experience, that is from user experience as well. The DJI T40 has what we've seen as the widest, most consistent swath because of the way the props and the motors are pitched and designed. So, yeah. Ignacio says faster speed is better on the spreader. Yeah, on the spreader, faster speed would be great for sure. Do you have a test chart showing height, width, speed? T40 will calculate rate, width, speed, but what height? Oh, gotcha. Yeah, we don't necessarily have a chart, I would say, that shows you what width at your heights and speeds, but we have we did about 28 different tests with the T40, different heights and speeds and gallons per acre and droplet size and everything to test the swath width, because it's subjective. One person may say that if I fly at 10 feet high, 32 feet per second, 2 gallons per acre, I get a 34-foot swath. Their neighbor will say, well, I'm going to use a 30-foot swath. Who's right? Right? Who's correct? Well, they're both correct. It's just how much overlap and the consistency do you want? We have not done tests with spreading as far as width or efficiency yet. Thanks, Benjamin. Appreciate the shout out there. Our parts department works very hard to make sure that you guys get your parts as quickly as possible. Generator, Leggett was asking the difference on the size of generator. Good question, Leggett. I believe it's basically the same. I mean, that's probably a little bit subjective too, because okay, is one charger and 3 batteries on a T40 good enough? Well, a lot of people, that's what they use. But if you've got a big field, 160 acres that you're doing with one T40, you'll be there for 4 hours maybe. And you might get into a situation with one battery or one charge or 3 batteries of T40 where you catch up to your battery charge. You're not charging fast enough, right? That's with a 10 kW generator. And so you would need like 1 1/4 T30 chargers to have a 1-to-1 ratio basically on your battery usage, battery charge ratio. That's where like the DJI generator, the D12000i charges faster. And it basically is a 1-to-1 ratio, but it's just a bit, higher output. So I don't know that I can tell you definitively, if you need a bigger generator for the XAG, but in my experience, you don't.
There's
Okay,
a few back over in the Q&A area now.
Yeah, I'll jump back over to the Q&A section now. For the propeller, do you know if they had fixed the issues with the T50 propeller when it melt during high temperatures? 35 degrees, I'm assuming that is Celsius. Anyways, we haven't seen them melt, so I don't know what you're talking about, the T40 props melting. We have seen like the prop pads, right? The washers that connect the propeller to the motor. Though the first ones that came out with the original T40s, those ones wore out quickly. There is a new and updated prop pad. So if you guys don't have that and want it, let us know. Okay, Jim says, will you make like an update of this comparison in the future using more true the time? Not sure what you mean there, but yeah, we'll keep testing, of course, Jim. Alvaro says, what main benefits would you mention to a company who's thinking about renewing their drone fleets? And it's between these two models. Alvaro, stick to what you know, probably. Honestly, if your guys are trained on one system and you've got multiple operators and you switch to a new system, that's a whole new training, it's a whole new supplier, it's a whole new part system, a whole new diagnosis. So if you know one of these systems very, very well and you haven't had big issues that kept you out of the field, stick to the system, right? So if you're looking to renew your drone fleet, replace it, stick to the system. If you're looking to start a new application business, then choose a supplier that has a track record, I would say, of good support and service is the biggest thing, honestly. Both these drones are good, so just choose a supplier that has a track record of good support and service. Okay, I hope I tried to answer that as unbiased as possible, Alvaro. Seeing your other comment there. All right, have you filled up your P100 Pro full of product and full batteries? How does it compare? We have not done a full payload hover tests with both these drones side by side. In our experience with our side by side spraying comparison, it was very similar on both these drones as far as when they were both full and the battery percentage that they came back with. So. And in what environment are you going to be flying around a full drone, not spraying anything? So why would it be beneficial to know? We do it, but I don't know why that's beneficial to know.
I think that's it for the moment.
Cool, that was easy. Figured these be a lot tougher questions tonight. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us here tonight. I hope this was helpful. Hope this gave you good information to make a good decision. If you have any questions that you think of afterwards, please reach out to us, email, call, text, and we'll get you answered. Thanks, guys. See ya.